Hi, welcome to another episode of the Beginner's Guide to Web Design series. In this video, we'll be having a review on what we wrote in the previous video. So let's quickly get to our text editor and get started. So in the last video, we wrote a very basic HTML code like this, and we opened it on our web browser and we got this output. In this video, I'll be going through some basic reviews on what we did here. So basically, like I mentioned in the previous video, whenever you're writing HTML, you always need to start with the root tag, which is the HTML tag. And I also mentioned that it's very important that whenever you create a tag, that's an opening tag, you should always follow up with a closing tag. And what differentiates an opening tag from a closing tag is this /, nothing much. Sometimes a lot of people forget to write the closing tag whenever they open a tag. What I usually recommend is whenever you write an opening tag, always ensure that you write a closing tag before you nest any tag. What do I mean by nesting? Nesting basically means when you put a tag inside another tag. That is, in this case, this title tag is wrapped in between this head tag. It means we nested the title tag in the head tag. So, and we'll be doing a lot of that in HTML. So it's something you get used to over time. Now, the first thing I want to quickly talk about is indentation. You'll notice I did a lot of code indentation like this, and like this. This is just a good practice when you're writing HTML code. It doesn't mean that if you don't nest your HTML tags, it will not work as expected. As a matter of fact, I'm going to remove all the indentation and then prove to you that it doesn't make any difference. So I removed all the indentation, but you can see here that my code doesn't look good at all. It doesn't even look attractive. Why is it important for us to write good HTML code? Because sometimes we share our codes with other programmers like us, who may improve on what we've written and make changes to what we've worked on. So it's important for us to write good code so that anyone can easily understand what we are doing and even make it better. So when I go back to my browser, I refresh. Whenever you make any change to your HTML code, it's important that you save it and refresh. So when you go back to your web browser, you see that everything still looks good, nothing changed. But the only difference here is that we have a bad looking code. So I wouldn't recommend that you write your HTML code like this. It's important that you indent. Now let's quickly indent this code back to the way it's supposed to be. How do we do that? The very simple tip for indentation is when you wrap a tag inside another tag, you should indent the child tag. The child tag is a tag that you are wrapping above another tag. What do I mean? Quickly, you will notice that the HTML tag here and the closing HTML tag here is wrapping the whole of this code. That means everything inside here are children to the HTML tag. That means it's important that we indent. So I'll just use my tab key on the left side of my keyboard and just indent by selecting the whole code like this, and then I'll unselect it. Now you still see that our code doesn't still look good. And we need more indentation. What's the next thing that we need to indent? I hope you're able to guess it. The title tag is in between our head tag. So this title tag is a child tag to the head tag. So we need to indent it to make it look neat. So I'll bring my cursor here and click the tab key, and then it looks better now. What else do we need to indent again? You can see that the body tag, we have two tags wrapped in between it. So it means these two tags need to be indented to make our code look better. So I'll just use the tab key, and now we have our code back to the way it was, looking well formatted and more appealing. So I'll just click the save, go back to my browser and refresh. Everything is still the same way it was before we indented and even after we removed the indentation. So basically you will get to see that irrespective of whether you indent or not, your code still works. The only difference, like I mentioned earlier, is that it's a good practice. Always make sure you indent your code. So one last thing I need to add is that HTML allows you to write codes without actually following standard, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't follow those standards when you're writing HTML codes. For example, I can actually move the title tag to our body like this, and then leave the head tag without anything, and I will save, and then go back to the browser and refresh. You see that we still have our title there. It may be working fine, but this is actually a bad practice. So irrespective of whether HTML allows you to write your code wherever you like or however you like, doesn't imply that you should do that. So we encourage you to follow standards. For example, right now, I'm going to take you to a website called W3 School. It's W3C, by the way. It's a standard validator platform that allows you to check if your HTML code was properly written. So I recommend you to always do that once in a while to make sure that you're writing good HTML code. Let's take our HTML code to this validator and see what it has to say about the code we've written. I can give you a heads up that definitely we have some issues in our HTML code, but let's find out. So I'll go back to my text editor and I'll copy all the HTML code that we've written, and then we'll go to validator.w3.org. That's the website. So when we go to the website, if your website is already hosted online, you can just put the address here, or you can also upload your HTML file from here. But I'll just use the editor they have here, and then I'll paste the whole of our HTML code, and then you click check. Once I click check, it will run a review on the code we wrote, and you can see that there are some issues that were identified on the code we wrote. Now, the first issue we're seeing here is that the HTML tag, we're supposed to make provision for an attribute called lang. We'll talk about attribute in future videos. I'll explain what an attribute means, but quickly I'll just make this adjustment, and then we'll test our code again and see if there's any other issue. So I'll go back here. This is what an attribute looks like. So the name of the attribute is lang, which means language, and then I'll put an equal sign, double quote, and then I'll write en here, meaning English. So HTML is expecting us to specify in the opening root tag which language. Is our code going to be seen in English language or any other native language of your choice? Basically, it's actually a requirement for HTML if you want to follow standards. So I'm going to make this change, and then I'll save it, and then I'll go back to our validator, and then I'll paste it again, and then we'll check. So after checking, we'll see that there's still an issue with our HTML code. So the issue here that is left is we don't have a doc type. Okay, that's one of the issues that was identified here. After providing the language, the next thing that is missing is a doc type. Doc type is just basically, it means document type declaration. HTML expects you to write a document type declaration at the top of every HTML file you create. That's whenever you are creating a HTML file, the first tag you're supposed to write is the tag that specifies the document type. And this is what a doc type looks like. Exclamation, doc type, and then HTML. Now, without writing these things, HTML doesn't flag any error on our browser, but you can see that the validator sees those things as issues that needs to be addressed on our HTML code. So let's quickly fix that. How do we fix that? We'll go back to our text editor. At the beginning here, I'll just give a space, and then I'll write this. You don't need a closing tag for a doc type. It's one of those things in your browser, in your HTML code, that doesn't require a closing tag. So to write a doc type, you just write exclamation like this, and then irrespective of whether you write it in lowercase or uppercase, it doesn't matter, but I would recommend you write it in this form. I'll write doc type like this, and then I'll write HTML, meaning the document type is what? HTML. So I will save this, and then I'll copy our code, and then I'll go back to our validator, and then I will paste it like this, and then I'll check. You can see that our HTML, the document checking was completed, and there were no errors. So these are some of the practices or best practices you're supposed to take note of or observe whenever you're writing HTML code. Always remember to specify your doc type at the beginning, and then also provide the language attribute at the root tag of your HTML. There are other things we'll be talking about in future videos, but I hope you've learned a couple of stuffs in this video. See you on the next episode.